Hello and welcome to Vintage Super League. I'm Randy Bueller, joined by Eric Froelich. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you. Always fun to be here.
I like the nice number 3 next to your name. We should talk about this. I know we were speculating last week how high
I was
up
literally thinking
the
the
program.
exact same thing. It's my first time seeing it, or my first time seeing it in a couple of years at least.
Yeah, no, that's certainly you have been on quite the heater. You're 2-0 in Vintage Super League as well, so we'll have to find out if the heater continues when you play Steve Menendian in the last round.
Absolutely. I lost to Steve last season, so good to have a rematch. I tried to tune my deck a little bit to have a little bit of an edge in the Delver matchup, but that really at peak means low 50%. So we'll see what happens.
What did you specifically do for that matchup?
I have multiple Pyroblast main. I have an extra Spell Pierce, which I thought would be good against both a Belcher deck or potentially a Delver deck. I have 4 Lightning Bolts, and yeah, I just feel like I have a lot of. I don't have any cards that I don't like. I'm not playing any cards like Null Rod in my deck, and my weakest cards are, I have cards like Dak Vaden that don't do a lot, but on an empty board, it's a Planeswalker, so pretty happy with my list. This is my first time that I can remember ever playing a deck where I'm confident I can use all 15 cards on my sideboard, so I feel good about that. And yeah, things have gone well. I've run quite good. I've played 2 very tight 3-game matches where it certainly could have gone either way. Obviously, against you, I was a pretty big underdog there in Game 3, and that one worked out. And against Dave Williams, he annihilated me Game 1, and my cards shined in the other game. So
I'm not convinced you got as lucky against David Williams as Steve Menendian did.
yeah.
Williams made them all to 1 in Game 3 last week, looking for Bazaar of Baghdad to fuel his dredge deck. Just never found anything, went all the way down to 1 card without finding it.
Yeah, and the other game was really actually exciting, where he kept a Bazaar hand. Steve had his one of Strip Mine. Dave ended up finding another Bazaar before Steve could really present a fast enough clock, which really gave Dave the driver's seat again. And Steve had his hand completely stripped with a bunch of therapies, no cards in hand. Drew Gush. Um, Dave's hand was a mental misstep, and his 2 cards off the Gush were Ancestral and Misstep to protect it. So, from there he just pulled ahead, and yeah, I was able to close that game out. But an exciting match, and of course, Game 3, Dave mulliganing to 0, and that one didn't even get played out. So, yeah, I mean, luckily my deck, I I put Dave as number 1 being on Dredge, with backup being Stacks, and I put you number 1 on Belcher with your backup being Dredge. So I came equipped with some Dredge sideboard cards. I have the Ravenous Traps to go with all the Grafdigger's Cages, and the traps were great. I drew 2 of them in Game 3 against Dave, so that was fantastic. And yeah, I needed it. It's a tough matchup.
Yeah, that's the other reason I think Steve actually got a little luckier against David than you did. His sideboard is not nearly as well equipped to fight Dredge as yours was.
Exactly, yeah.
But I guess he's running hot too. Other people are allowed to have heaters, right?
Absolutely.
Defending champ comes back, battles off a couple.
Yeah, I mean, my heater actually started last season Vintage Super
I don't know.
League.
I mean, well, obviously, there's a lot on the first match we're playing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't have it on the first match we're going to play, but that last.
my computer, I can't hear anything. All right. Well, it looks like we lost Randy. I couldn't hear exactly what was happening there, but we were probably talking about my heater, which I know all about, so I could handle that. It has been a good one. It's been a nice long while. Been over a year now of things going pretty well for me and across all the formats. And of course, this would be the most fun format. I've been loving playing the Vintage Super League. Gotten more people coming up to me at tournaments for Vintage Super League than anything else in the world, and it's been fantastic. So I'd definitely like to thank everyone watching. Because seriously, like Grand Prix, all my opponents, some people come up to me, and it's like one of those things where someone comes up to you and just like tells you they really like your work on Vintage Super League, they really like what you guys are doing. You're just like, those are the really heartfelt ones that mean something to you. So that's fantastic, and I appreciate everyone doing that. And yeah, we can go back to discussing the number 3 next to it.
Yeah. The number 3. Yeah, I was saying Steve's on a bit of a heater too.
Of course.
Right, defending champ, rattles off 2 wins. So we will see who collides, and the winner will be the only 3-0 going into next week.
Right, until Chris can actually play his match.
Right, Chris will be 2-0 going into next week. And for those of you who didn't hear that news, there are 4 matches tonight. Chris Bakula can't make the show tonight, personal reasons. He'll be back next week with 2 matches, playing, of course, the old decks, his matchup against David, and then showing off whatever he decides to run in the next match. I think I'm actually his new opponent next week.
So you guys going to test together again?
I do not expect that call.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's an important thing for Vintage Super League. We talk about people running well, and if you're going to be on top of the standings, there are no slouches in this league. There are no decks that are not very capable of winning, and no players that are not very capable of winning. So if you're going to have a good record, it probably means you ran pretty hot. I mean, you could face opponents who are just killing you on turn 1 when you can't do anything anyway. Lots of things can happen. We're playing Vintage. There's a lot of variance, and that means that, for me to continually do well in Vintage Super League, I can more than acknowledge the fact that it means that I'm running quite well. I mean, the edge that you can get over any other player is so slim.
I certainly, you can certainly see the way the standings got compressed at the end of last year, right? 5-way tie within a game of 500. Not many people, I guess only 2 players got more than a game over 500 last year. So you'll see a cluster in the middle of the standings. But I also think, Luis and Steve played great last season. I don't think it was an accident that it was the 2 of them that managed to get more than a game above 500.
No, they absolutely played great. They played good decks, but if you had replaced them with Rich Day and Bob Maher, you would have said the exact same thing. It's just
maybe
this is just the league that it is what it is. You've got a lot of Pro Tour top 8s, a lot of Hall of Famers, a lot of Player of the Years.
And that's just the first match, right?
Yeah. We haven't even seen much of Kai. He's got the rest of us covered in some ways. So yeah, there's a lot of talent.
Yeah, if we look, I don't know if we can throw the schedule up just to make sure everybody knows what's going on tonight. We are starting off with all the trophies, all the just ridiculous resumes. Kai Buddha, Luis Scott Vargas, arguably number 1 and number 3 all time. I don't know if you want to voice an opinion about where you've got these guys in terms of all-time rankings of Magic players.
I have not ranked out my top 5 other than the fact that I have John at 1 and Kai at 2. The rest of my top 5 rounds out to Gabriel Nassif, Luis, and William Huey Jensen. So yeah, you can put them pretty interchangeably there, and yeah,
I've got John and Kai 1, 2, and I feel I tend toward John at 1, but the case for Kai is not hard to make. And then I go back and forth on Luis or Gabe for number 3 all time.
Fair.
I said,
absolutely.
Arguably number 1 and number 3 all time. Definitely 2 of the 5 best players who've ever attacked for 2.
Yeah. What John's still doing on the Pro Tour today, putting up top 16s in every tournament, is really cementing his place as, if not number 1, he's certainly never going to be lower than number 2. So
yeah, that's
and Kai is. What can you not say about Kai?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a peak value versus career value argument at this point, right? Kai at his peak was just sort of better than, or certainly the results, more better than John ever had for any sort of sustained 2-3 year period. Was it 3 running Player of the Year titles in 4 out of 5 years? 7 Pro Tour wins inside of a 5-year span? Just his peak was absurd.
Yeah.
But John does have more top 8s and sustained sort of top 16 quality finishes all the way up to 2 weeks ago.
I think I heard the stat this weekend that John had at least, if not more than 24 top 16s in Pro Tours.
Oh my God. 20 top 16s. Now he must. He's got like 14 top 8s, doesn't he?
Right, but that's still another 10 top 16s.
That's true. That is kind of absurd.
If you look at Apollo Vitor, who most people are going to have in the top 10, he has 9 Pro Tour top 8s. He has 0 top 16s.
Wow.
And so you take a lot of us in our careers where you have a pretty even distribution. If you have a few top 8s and a couple more top 16s than that, you have your 3 top 8s and your 4 top 16s. You've had a great career, but he's got 14 and 10. How many Pro Tours has he played in?
Most of them, to be fair.
Sure,
but that's still
you're
Yeah,
still
well
talking
over
about
25% to top
30% of the time he's in the top 16, which is astronomical.
There've been just under 100 Pro Tours for what it's worth. And
Sure.
John did play PT1, so he's played. I mean, he hasn't played all of them, but he's played most.
Yeah, he's probably played guesstimate 70.
I would take the over on 70. I bet it's closer to. I bet it's 80 something.
I think he had a pretty solid like 6-year stretch where he played like one or two.
Was it that
But
long? He definitely took the break.
I might be wrong. I'm not saying I'm right, but I felt like that John kind of stepped away from the game around the same time I did, which was around 2005.
Yeah.
He was part of the reason. John was one of my good friends, along with many other players who kind of moved on to different career paths, be it poker, be it whatever options trading you're going to do. And a lot of us kind of took a step away from the game. And there weren't a lot of the U.S. Magic players that you knew and loved, I guess, if that was what you were watching back in
No,
the
that's
day.
fair. There was one Worlds. I think it was 2004. It was the one in San Francisco, where there was only one American in the top 32,
That's incredible.
and he was like 20 something.
Wow.
Like the United States went over the top 16 and won for the top 32.
Well, I remember distinctly looking up coverage of U.S. Nationals, I believe it was 2008, and seeing in first place a guy from Korea, in second place a guy from Chile, in third place what I could only imagine was like from Switzerland or something. We've got like Cheon, Scott Vargas, and Lundqvist. I'm like, we don't have a single American on the U.S. team anymore. That's where we're at. Like, all right,
Funny.
well, might have to look to come back. I mean, John played a sporadic PT here or there. Of course, he won Kuala Lumpur, and
Yep. That was after he got into the Hall of Fame. I feel like the Hall of Fame is what got him kickstarted back in. It's funny. I remember actually I was inside Wizards at this point in time, and Renee Raub was running the program. So the first class of the Hall of Fame included John, and she just sent everybody, a box of everything that was standard legal. Just to, let people have some product to practice with, maybe draft before they came to play the Pro Tour where they were getting inducted. And so, yeah, like 5 or 6 displays of boosters show up on John Finkel's doorstep. He's like, what am I going to do with these? I guess it's time to start drafting again. And he basically hasn't stopped drafting ever since.
yeah, that's fantastic.
I give Renee full credit for that. I don't know that it was just like, here, first couple are free. Come on, come back in. Water's fine.
Yeah, I have no idea how little John played during his hiatuses because when people quit Magic, nobody quits Magic. I mean, like I wasn't playing any Magic and I was still looking up U.S. Nationals coverage.
Fair enough. So yeah, no John Finkel, but we do have Luis Scott Vargas and Kai Buddha. You got a pick in this matchup?
I don't. They're both too good.
Have you messed around with Luis's Doomsday deck? It is awesome. I definitely have taken it for a spin or two on Magic Online, and I've just oh my god, the Doomsday, it's so good. It's so good and so much more consistent than I thought it would be. It's
Yeah,
both faster than I thought it would be and more consistent than I thought it would be.
yeah. It's definitely an impressive deck. It's a deck that I actually had considered not strongly, but had considered running week 1 of season 1. It
Wow.
wasn't number 1 on my list or even close, but it was a deck I looked at and was something that I had in the back of my mind for future weeks. And Steve ended up playing it and went 3-0. I'm like, all right, so now if I just do really badly with this deck, it makes it look like I'm real stupid, I guess. Like, this deck is clearly really strong, and if I just get, bring it to the table, go 0-3, and I got inside my own head and just ended up not playing it the rest of the
Oh,
season.
funny.
Even though I kind of wanted to, I ended up playing, like, the blue control deck, which was an interesting choice, I think, rather than playing a Doomsday deck, because I think that was part of my psyche at the time. But, yeah, the deck is sweet. I mean, the draws that Luis had are obviously not really sustainable. The deck is not quite as quick as some of the other combo decks. Like obviously there are a number of decks that can not consistently but quote unquote consistently go off turn 1. You have played a number of them, and this isn't one of them. But we've seen Luis have the turn 1 kill now against Tom. He had a turn 2 kill against Tom. He actually had a turn 1 kill against you in game 1 before he realized that he set the settings wrong, and so the match could not be viewed and had to restart and then got destroyed.
I'm sure I had a Force of Will.
Yeah,
I find that the fast bond is the key to the turn 1 kills in this deck.
Oh, yeah.
Like it has to cast a BBB spell, so it's got, and it only plays like one Lotus, one Dark Ritual, a Jet. If you get the fast spawn is when I think the deck goes completely nuts.
Right. I mean, the fast pawn Gush engine is just really powerful.
Yeah, it really is. I've never played a deck where I've tutored for fast bond as much as you do with this deck. It's often the card that you want to get.
Actually, the deck that Luis and I played in the top 4 of season 1 was very much, the fast spawn Gush engine was the big thing that we were going for. And so, you saw us go off against each other kind of on turn ones with this fast spawn Gush engine, and Luis doing the same with Doomsday. I'm not sure which gel I like better. I think the Doomsday one is certainly cooler, and it's probably a little bit better than the one that we had last season.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an engine. And meanwhile, Kai with a fairly reliable Delver deck. I mean, that's what you chose to bring into battle here. Is Delver just firmly established as a tier 1 vintage archetype now?
I think so. I think that's pretty safe to say. Delver was one of the stronger decks in Vintage before Treasure Cruise got printed, and of course, Treasure Cruise, even only playing one copy, you can play some copies of Dig Through Time. The deck's just strong. It's kind of the aggro control route where you can play a threat and then leave up mana the rest of the game to protect it. You don't have to try to kill necessarily quickly. Young Pyromancers get out of control pretty quickly. You can play Delver on the play and then just have a bunch of Spell Pierces, Fluster Storms, mental missteps, force of wills, like so much counter magic. If you're Steve, you get misdirections. Like it's just a lot of ways to really really play good defense, and that ability to disrupt combo decks so that you actually, well, a matchup like Belcher is certainly not good. You don't want to face Belcher. It's certainly a bad matchup, but you can get draws that you're going to be favored. I mean, there's definitely a lot of disruption you can have in your deck, and so it's hard to not have game against everything, and that's what good players tend to like. You want to have game. I mean, it sucks sometimes to really rely on that die roll and really rely more on variance than you have to. And so Delver is a consistent and strong deck that can play against anything, and that's a fun place to be in Magic. That's the type of deck that I generally prefer to play. It is a kind of why I chose the deck that I chose in Modern, playing just a junk deck that can that control route and just go aggressive with Tarmogoyfs and control their hand. Obviously, Thought Seizes are not as strong as Force of Wills, where you can't stop what's on top of their deck, but it's the same general thing.
Makes sense to me. We will have a Delver mirror after Luis and Kai. It'll be more Kai. We get 2 matches from Kai this week. He's making up for having missed week 1. So he'll play the Delver mirror actually against Rich Shea in our second round tonight, giving the preview for your match, which is the Delver mirror in the last round tonight. Before we get there, though, Bob Maher and Tom Martell will be throwing down Dredge versus Crucibond, I guess. Maher's deck is shenanigans.
It is shenanigans. That is a good way of describing it. It's funny because it has it's just a control deck and it's got that combo finish, but it doesn't have a super strong combo finish. It feels like there's just better things you can be doing when you have cards like Fastbond, where you can just go with these engines that don't require a Crucible that doesn't do anything, and a Caravex Swords that doesn't do anything, and a Zoran Orb that kind of doesn't do anything. So it is more of a pet deck combo deck than the other ones, but the rest of the deck is just basically the streamlined fast bond combo deck. It just has a different way of trying to end the game that is a little bit cuter, and I feel a little bit less powerful, but Bob loves the deck. He's been playing it for quite a while, and yeah.
Martell will be trying to get the first win on behalf of Dredge. Dredge is actually 0-4 so far this season.
Yeah, that is pretty surprising, although I don't mind it.
No, I mean, it seems like everybody is going to have some sideboard cards for Dredge. Nobody's going to be confused by how to play the matchup. I mean, I don't know. Does that just make Dredge weak for VSL purposes, or is it just kind of random that it's all the way at 0-4?
See, I'm not really sure. As you probably picked up on my commentary, Dredge is not my cup of tea. It's a deck that I understand what it's trying to do, but I don't understand the various lines, the high level. I can't play Dredge at a high level or analyze it at a high level, and I know that. But in the end, it's still Magic, and I can see what the cards do and what the general game plan is. And I've not seen Dredge put up good results in any Vintage tournaments kind of ever. I mean, for a long time. follow the vintage scene. I mean, I try to stay on top of the new decks people are building and some of the results in some of the vintage hotspots around the world. I just don't see Dredge ever doing well, and I know it's played. I mean, I know it's not because it's just not showing up. But like you look at like the vintage championships and various events like that, and Dredge just doesn't do a lot of winning. It's a solid game one deck that you can beat if you want to, and I don't know how consistent it is because I haven't played it enough. Maybe it's more consistent than we're seeing. Of course, we've seen Dave Williams multiple times already just not be able to find a Bazaar in his, in a hand, period, before going down to one card, which, people have said is only a couple percent to happen, but it's happening. So obviously when it happens, the deck just can't win. So maybe the deck is a lot better than I've seen or that I know. I'm certainly not claiming it's not great. It might be the best deck in Vintage, but I just haven't seen it put up a lot of results, and it's not the style of deck that I enjoy playing or playing against. There's not a lot to it. It's not super fun to watch or try to interact with, because if you are interacting with it, the deck is effectively doing nothing. You just have a ley line or a cage or something like that in play, and
Right.
the deck is basically not doing anything. So it's not really like entertaining Magic to me. So for something like this, it's not the type of deck that I would lean towards playing, and it's also just not my personal style. When I play Vintage, it's more for entertainment than anything else. If there was, millions of dollars on the line, or you're playing to save your life, okay, maybe I'll look at Dredge a little bit harder, but it's just not my cup of tea. And so I don't know. Maybe the deck is better than I give it credit for. I'm certainly not claiming the deck is not
Yeah,
strong, but I
the
haven't seen
folks
it.
in chat are pointing out a couple of events that it has won. I guess it won Vintage Champs in 2012 is what Blondie is saying. Probably butchered the pronunciation on that. A couple Bazaar of Moxen. Not anything lately. I agree. I mean, since we cranked up Vintage Super League, I haven't seen it put up any significant results.
Yeah,
But
because I certainly
it has
checked
had
out.
some, and I think part of the reason it doesn't put up results is that everyone knows that if you're not prepared for it, you can't interact. I mean, it comes at the game from such a crazy angle that you either have half a dozen sideboard cards or you're probably losing the match.
Yeah, totally true.
Well, you have half a dozen sideboard cards or you have a faster clock. I mean, the true combo decks, a Blue Belcher, for example, don't actually need to interact with Dredge because you're actually just faster than they are.
Which is another reason, I guess, why I don't really enjoy that type of deck. I like to interact with you. If you try to charbelch me, I'd like to make you think about it. So at the very least.
All right, mission accomplished. I probably shouldn't have spun the wheel on the time twister last time. What are you gonna do? So we are about ready for our first match. Luis and Kai are getting set up. We're trying to make sure we have hand cams. Luis will be making the game shortly, so not much longer now. We will not have a match between Chris Paquil and David Williams this week. That has been pushed towards next week. So Blue Belcher, I guess, is going to be sitting at 4-1 coming out of week 3. Dredge at 0-4. Those are kind of interesting. Delver is sort of 500-ish at this point. Have you added up? We've got, what, fully 4 Delver lists now?
Guess it's me and Steve at 2-0 and Rich and Kai at 0-3. Is that right?
Yeah, so I guess it's 4-3.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Certainly get a lot more. Well, I guess we have 2 mirrors, so we only get 1 Delver versus not Delver result to add to that. Okay, I don't know. My head is all in. What am I going to play next week? Right? I don't have to play this week. I had to double in week 1 because Kai couldn't make it. So my head is all, okay, are there Fate Reforged cards I'm supposed to be playing with? Like, is Monastery Mentor a real thing? Can Tassiter do anything in Vintage? I'm all about trying to figure out what people are going to be playing next week. We definitely do have new decks for next week. If you guys haven't been with us before, every 3 weeks, people can change decks. So this is the 3rd week with the first set of decks. Next week, you show up, Fate Reforged will be legal in VSL for the first time. Gifts Ungiven will be a month post-banning. We'll see if anybody does anything with that. I mean, I want to ask you your opinion. I know you can't actually give me a straight-up answer, though.
I can give you a straight-up answer. I mean, the thing is, with someone like me and Luis, you have an idea of where our head's at. We're going to try to make things happen in the blue realm if we can.
Yeah, sure. You're going to have blue cards in your deck.
I've played Islands every time, and so has Luis, and honestly haven't really considered not doing so. It'll probably happen at some point, with various playoff structures. If you're going to have to play, different gauntlets of the decks that you've played, you might have to mix a little bit just to have a little extra game. But Yeah, I think Gifts is an extremely powerful card. If you can cast it, it costs 4 mana. So
Yeah, I mean, I wish
gotta
I,
find a
I
way
agree with
to do.
both of those statements. I want to cast it so badly. I did get to mana drain a Dig Through Time and sink the mana into it gifts at one point in testing.
That's insane.
Highly recommend it. It's awesome if you can manage it. But yeah, mana drain might be too slow for vintage nowadays, which is really sad. Same might be true of gifts as well. Anyway,
Yeah.
we have a match. Next week will be next week. We can spend a lot more time talking about gifts and monastery mentors, but here we